In the history of crime in China, it's not uncommon for women to be sentenced to death. Some were so stunningly beautiful that many couldn't help but feel shocked and regretful, as if their beauty had ended up in the wrong place. But in 1991, there was one case that, when mentioned, didn't just shake the male population. It sent shockwaves through the entire society at the time. The reason was that the main figure in this case, a young woman who was both beautiful and intelligent, was hiding crimes no one could have imagined. And after her execution, she left behind a slip of paper with just 5 words that made her own mother break down in tears of regret. What haunted people even more was the fact that, at the time of her death sentence, the girl was only 20 years old, a time of life that should have been full of vibrancy and promise. So, what exactly did that seemingly fragile, delicate young woman do to deserve such a severe sentence? The most beautiful female death row inmate in China, Tao Jing, was born in 1971 in a small mountain village in Ruili, Yunnan province. She came from a warm and loving family with both parents, an older brother and an older sister, as the youngest child. Tao Jing was especially pampered and adored. With her sweet and charming face, along with a gentle and kind-hearted nature, she easily won the affection of everyone who met her. But then, something completely unexpected happened when she was still in elementary school. That day, during a physical education class, Tao Jing sprained her ankle and was allowed to leave early to rest at home. What no one could have foreseen was that the moment she opened the door and stepped into her house would become a haunting memory that would stay with her for the rest of her life. Right in front of the little girl was the image of her father lying in bed with a strange woman, shocked and overwhelmed. Tao Jing could do nothing but collapse onto the floor and burst into tears. Her sobs were so loud that neighbors rushed over to see what had happened, and they too ended up witnessing the heartbreaking scene with their own eyes. As the old saying goes, good news stays close, but bad news travels far. Within just a few days, the entire village knew that Tao Jing's father had been unfaithful. When her mother heard the news, she was devastated, furious, and the couple had a loud, heated argument. But in the end, after many apologies and pleas for forgiveness from her husband, Tao Jing's mother chose to stay silent and endure it all. In 1979, when Tao Jing was just 8 years old, another blow struck. Her father had cheated again. This time, her mother couldn't bear it any longer. Not wanting to repeat the same mistake, she decided to file for divorce. By then, Tao Jing's older brother and sister were already adults, more than 10 years her senior, and had families of their own. After the divorce, Tao Jing was sent to live with her older sister and brother-in-law in Beijing. While she lacked nothing materially, her emotional world was a different story. The turmoil in her family had left deep psychological scars. Once a lively, cheerful, and sensitive child, Tao Jing gradually became quiet and distant, eventually showing signs of rebellion in 1984. At just 13 years old, a sensitive, confusing age when young people desperately need guidance, Tao Jing began to truly go off track. She started hanging out with troubled peers, smoking, drinking, getting into fights, and often stayed out all night without coming home. At first, her teachers still tried to give her chances, hoping she would eventually turn things around and focus on her studies again. But all those efforts seemed to be in vain. Then in 1989, Tao Jing dropped out of university altogether. Her older sister was deeply worried, afraid that Tao Jing would continue hanging out with bad influences and fall even deeper into trouble. So she encouraged her to learn a trade, specifically hair washing and beauty services. After some hesitation, Tao Jing agreed. With help from a family acquaintance, she got a job at a hair salon in the city. Thanks to her rare, striking beauty, the number of customers skyrocketed after she started working there. Seeing that, Tao Jing was genuinely happy. She began to hope, maybe from now on, I can finally live a stable, truly happy life. But little did Tao Jing know, that was only the beginning of a series of tragedies waiting for her ahead. In 1990, China began facing a surge of illicit drugs flowing in from abroad. Several border regions, especially the area known as the Golden Triangle, quickly became hotspots for the trafficking of these substances from foreign countries. China, a country that had once suffered deeply from the devastating effects of past drug wars, was beginning to recognize the gravity of the situation. And in November of that same year, the government officially established the National Narcotics Control Commission, marking the launch of a large-scale, systematic crackdown across the entire nation. One day in 1991, less than a year after the National Narcotics Control Commission was established at the Ruili border checkpoint, which sits between China's Yunnan province and Myanmar, a security officer was going about his routine duties, inspecting incoming travelers. Among the long line of people waiting to be processed, one young woman stood out, delicate facial features, fair skin, dressed rather lightly, and carrying an air of unease and nervousness. According to the documents she handed over, she was re-entering China from Myanmar. But what caught the attention of the officers was the fact that, aside from a small crossbody bag, she wasn't carrying any luggage at all. When asked, "What brings you to Ruili?" the young woman lowered her head and mumbled softly, "I'm here to visit relatives." The answer sounded reasonable enough. Nothing seemed particularly suspicious. The officers didn't press further and proceeded with the standard full-body inspection as per protocol. Just as the inspection was nearly complete and the gate into Ruili was about to open, an officer from the anti-narcotics police unit suddenly stepped forward. He approached the young woman and quietly asked, "Miss, are you feeling unwell? Why do you keep holding your stomach like that?" The moment she heard the question, the girl visibly flinched, her body jerked slightly, and she quickly lowered her head, clearly flustered. That unusual reaction immediately raised suspicion. Following the protocol of better to check by mistake than to overlook a threat, the officers decided to escort her back to headquarters for a more thorough inspection using specialized equipment. And then, something no one had expected was uncovered. Upon conducting a thorough inspection beneath her underwear, authorities discovered a large quantity of illegal drugs hidden inside the young woman's body, amounting to 4,842 grams. This was an extremely serious amount, enough to warrant prosecution at the highest level, the death penalty under Chinese law. Immediately, the girl's identity was investigated. The results revealed that the person in custody was only 20 years old, originally from Yunnan, and her name was Tao Jing. At this point, the anti-narcotics police began to raise questions. Looking into her evasive eyes and visibly anxious expression, they wondered, how could a slim 20-year-old girl like her have decided on her own to transport such a large amount of drugs? They were almost certain that Tao Jing wasn't the mastermind. More likely, she was a victim, someone who had been manipulated or coerced into doing it. So the investigators began to gently persuade her. They said, "Be honest and you'll be shown leniency. Resist and you'll face harsh consequences. As long as you reveal who's behind this, you can earn merit and reduce your sentence." But at that moment, Tao Jing remained silent. No denial, no justification. Despite the police's efforts to reason with and encourage her, she still refused to cooperate. According to Article 347 of China's criminal law at the time, anyone who smuggled, sold, transported, or manufactured illegal drugs, if the case fell under certain specially serious circumstances, could face a prison sentence of 15 years, life imprisonment, or even the death penalty, along with fines and confiscation of property, specifically smuggling, selling, transporting, or producing more than 1 kilogram of stimulants, or a large quantity of other illegal drugs, etc. Leading groups involved in the smuggling, sale, transportation, or production of narcotics, aiding or facilitating the sale, transport, or manufacture of illegal drugs, resisting inspection, detention, or arrest with violence, especially in serious cases, participating in organized international drug trafficking operations. Falling into any one of these categories meant only one thing: the consequences would be unmistakably severe. In Tao Jing's case, Hiding nearly half a kilogram of illegal drugs inside her body while crossing the border was a grave violation of criminal law. Legally speaking, the death penalty was virtually unavoidable. However, the police still offered her one final chance. They spoke to her directly. "As long as you reveal who's behind this, your sentence can be reduced. You might even escape the death penalty. This is the only way to save your life." The door to survival was almost wide open. All it took was a single confession, just one word. If Tao Jing was willing to speak, but no, she remained silent, absolutely silent. The police began to lose patience. They couldn't wait any longer. And so, with the evidence gathered from the inspection, they officially filed criminal charges against Tao Jing. The trial began. Before and throughout the trial, the judge repeatedly emphasized one thing: if you reveal who the ringleader is, your sentence will be reconsidered. There's still a chance, but Tao Jing remained like stone. Not a word, not a whisper, no plea for mercy. A 20-year-old girl standing before the death penalty. Yet her silence was chilling throughout the entire trial. No one could truly understand what was going through this girl's mind. Why wouldn't she speak? Was she protecting someone? Afraid of something? Or had she simply fallen into such deep despair that she no longer had the strength to fight? And then the death sentence was officially handed down. But the story didn't end there. Just before the execution, Tao Jing, the girl who had remained silent throughout her entire time in custody, suddenly made one final request to the prison officer. "Please remove the intrauterine device from my body. I want to leave this world clean." At first, everyone was stunned by the request. But then they understood. In her hometown, there was an old belief that when someone dies, no metal must remain in their body. Otherwise, they would become a restless spirit, a wandering ghost, never able to find peace in the afterlife. After seeking approval from higher authorities, prison doctors set up a makeshift operating table and removed the intrauterine device from Tao Jing's body. On October 28, 1991, the sentence was carried out. That young woman, just 20 years old, officially ended her life. But what left many with a heavy heart was a small slip of paper found in her hand after she passed. Just 5 carefully written words: "Still love you so much, Mom." People couldn't help but wonder, what if back then her mother hadn't left her to be raised by her sister? What if Tao Jing had grown up with love, with proper guidance and care? Maybe, just maybe, her life wouldn't have spiraled the way it did. Maybe she wouldn't have had to pay with her life after Tao Jing's death. The Ruili City Police didn't stop. They kept digging, following every lead. From witness testimonies, archived records, to the scattered fragments left behind in the young woman's life. And finally, the truth began to surface. The one behind it all was a man named Yang Bio. He had entered Tao Jing's life like some kind of miracle at that time. She had just started working at a hair salon in the city, her very first job after a troubled past of rebellion and dropping out of school. She was trying to live decently, hoping to start over. And then Yang Bio appeared. He was a man in his 20s, tall, good-looking, well-dressed, and spoke in a gentle, respectful manner. He introduced himself as a Chinese expatriate from Myanmar, doing cross-border business. The first time he came to the salon, he was just a regular customer. But after that, he started visiting every few days, and each time, he insisted on being served by one person, only Tao Jing. She didn't know exactly when it happened, but the polite greetings gradually turned into warm conversations, and the appearance of Yang Bio became something she looked forward to every single day. Everything changed after one incident when a drunk customer tried to harass her right at the salon. It was Yang Bio who stepped in, defended her, and saved her in front of everyone. From that moment on, in Tao Jing's heart, Yang Bio was no longer just a customer, he was a hero. She quickly fell in love with him, wholeheartedly, sincerely, and blindly, because, for the first time, someone truly treated her with kindness. He didn't ignore her. He didn't act indifferent. Tao Jing was always gentle, always asking if she had eaten, if she was feeling okay. Whenever they met, he would softly scold her in a teasing way. "Why are you so skinny? Haven't eaten all day, have you?" Those simple questions melted Tao Jing's heart, because from the time she was a child, no one had ever cared for her like that. Her parents got divorced, and neither of them wanted to raise her. Her sister had her own family and rarely paid attention to her. At home, Tao Jing always felt like an outsider. But when she was with Yang Bio, she felt important, she felt loved. She felt like she finally had someone she could lean on. She once dreamed of a prince on a white horse who would come and rescue her from her life. And now, she truly believed she had found him. The two quickly became an inseparable couple. They were together almost every day, laughing, talking, happy. She began to dream of a home, a bright future ahead. Then one day, Yang Bio gently held Tao Jing's hand and said, "Why don't we go to Myanmar? We'll get married, build a life together. I'll give you a good life." Hearing that, Tao Jing believed him without a hint of doubt, because to her, Yang Bio was everything. And so, she quit her job, kept everything from her family, and quietly followed Yang Bio across the border into Myanmar. She truly believed this was the fateful journey that would lead her to happiness. But all those dreams shattered far too quickly. Tao Jing had no idea that this journey wouldn't lead her to paradise, but would instead drag her straight into hell. The moment she set foot in Myanmar, she believed she had found a peaceful place to start a new life with the man she loved. But not long after, everything changed completely. Yang Bio, the man who used to gently ask about her meals and how she slept, started to become a stranger. He was no longer by her side often. Every time he left the house, he would vanish for days, never staying in the same place for more than 3 days. And what was even stranger, he never once let her know how to contact him when he was gone. He was always the one to reach out to her, as if everything had to be under his control. At first, Tao Jing thought maybe Yang Bio was hiding something shady, or worse, that there was another woman. But those suspicions turned out to be far more bearable than the horrifying truth she was about to face. With sweet words and whatever love remained, Yang Bio began to manipulate the young woman. He convinced her to get close to some dangerous gang members, claiming it was to help him build business connections. But in truth, it was all just a setup, paving the way for cross-border drug trafficking. When Tao Jing showed resistance, Yang Bio dropped the gentle act. He began to threaten her, pressure her, and in the end, forced her to transport illegal drugs. The most heartbreaking part was, even after realizing Yang Bo's true identity as a notorious drug trafficker, Tao Jing's heart still couldn't let him go. She had tried to leave him at one point. After discovering she was pregnant, she quietly went to a hospital for an abortion because she didn't want the child to be tied to a man like him. But then, like a cruel cycle, Yang Bio came back. This time, he found her face full of regret, his voice as sweet as honey. "I know what I'm doing is illegal, but once I save up enough money, I swear I'll stop. I want to live a proper life with you." Tao Jing's heart softened once again. She believed him, believed that love, if strong enough, could redeem a person, believed that if she just stayed by his side, he would truly change. They got back together, and then he took her to get an IU'd, so there would be no more accidents like before. But in reality, everything had been planned in advance. After that, Yang Bio began using Tao Jing as a tool to make money. He ordered her to hide heroin in her underwear and smuggle it across the border from Myanmar into China. Each time she successfully completed a delivery, he paid her 2,000 yuan. He even laid out a so-called agreement. If Tao Jing were ever caught, he would send 10,000 yuan a year to her mother. Until the day she died, he never intended to stop. He needed money, and Tao Jing was nothing more than a pawn on his chessboard. In fact, if she were caught, he saw it as a shield to protect himself, just to be sure. Yang Biao even made her swear a cruel vow disguised as love. If either of us gets caught, whether alive or dead, we must never reveal the other. Tao Jing nodded. She made the vow and she kept it until the very end, even after she was arrested facing the death penalty. Given countless chances to save her own life, Yang Biao remained silent. She didn't speak, she didn't betray. Not a single word left her lips. Even as she was led to the execution ground, she asked for only one small thing: to have the contraceptive device removed so she could leave this world clean. Tao Jing had given her heart to the wrong man, but she loved him with everything she had. People felt heartbroken for her. The 20-year-old girl who loved blindly. They felt anger on her behalf, because if the roles were reversed, Yang Biao would have likely betrayed her in a heartbeat, just to save himself. And yet, they couldn't help but bow their heads, because never before had they seen a love so foolish, yet so fiercely loyal. On her very first trip smuggling drugs into China, things didn't go as smoothly as Yang Biao had promised. Lacking experience and carrying a large quantity of narcotics, Tao Jing was caught and arrested at the border by anti-drug police forces. The life of the 20-year-old girl, young, beautiful, once full of hope for a loving home, came to an end right then and there. People called her the most beautiful female death row inmate in China, not just for her striking appearance, but for the heartbreakingly cruel love story she had endured. At an age when she should have been living the brightest years of her life, she instead received the harshest sentence, the death penalty. And what's even more heartbreaking, she became the youngest female inmate ever executed for drug-related crimes in modern Chinese history. From 1949 up to that point, all because of one word, love. But when the police dug deeper into the case, they uncovered an even more bitter truth. Tao Jing wasn't even his real name, which meant, from beginning to end, even the name she had etched into her youth was a lie. She had been deceived completely, and the most heartbreaking part, even though the entire drug trafficking ring was dismantled, the true identity of that man remains a mystery to this day. If only Tao Jing had spoken up, if only she had named the man behind it all, she might have had her sentence reduced. She might still be alive, but she chose death to keep a promise. Her death sent shockwaves through the public, sparking a storm of divided opinions. Some mourned her, calling her a girl blinded by love, more to be pitied than blamed. But others were furious. They condemned her as unfilial, because how could she abandon her aging mother back home, all for a man she hadn't even known that long? Then, perhaps she wouldn't have searched so desperately for love. Perhaps she wouldn't have traded her entire life just to keep a promise to a man who deceived her. And perhaps she wouldn't have died at only 20 years old. Then maybe she wouldn't have longed so blindly for her first taste of love. Then maybe she wouldn't have fallen into the hands of a devil disguised as a prince. And maybe her life wouldn't have ended in such heartbreaking tragedy, all because of someone who never truly loved her. Today's video ends here. Thank you all for watching until the very end. See you in the next videos. Goodbye.